Hi all. So we are starting uh, so welcome to the third and the final session of CEED 2026 series hosted by FOF Kozhikode. I'm Kartika and I will be your host for the day. Super happy for everybody who have joined us. And for those of you who are joining us for the very first time, let me give you a brief introduction about who we are and what all we do. So basically, Friends of Figma Cold Code is a design community by and for designers where we talk about design, debate on good design and bad design, and where connections grow beyond just portfolios. We discuss and where friendships are born. So for today, we have with us Muhammad Fuad, FO Cold Code Community Lead and Product Designer at IOCode Infotech, Hafiz City, Co-Organizer FO Cold Code, Product Generalist at Make My Pass, and Mishal Abubakar, Co-Organizer FO Cold Code and UX Designer at Alpha Technologies, the three powerhouses who is keeping this community strong, growing, and incredibly welcoming. So, moving on to the main star of the day, our speaker. For our third and final session, we have with us Ishan Aditya, a UX designer at Google, with a background shaped by storytelling and problem solving. He studied fashion communication at NIF Bhubaneswar and later ventured briefly into filmmaking, directing documentaries for the government of India, and crafting film sets within the industry. Somewhere between building worlds of characters and understanding the world of real people, Ishan cracked SEED with an All India rank of 6 and pursued his master's in design from IIT Guwahati. He thrives on complex real world challenges and deep research, empathy, and impact lie at the core of everything he designs. So, Ishan, I'm welcoming you again. The screen is all yours. Sorry.
Thank you, Kartika. Thank you for such a that introduction was longer than my work experience, so
So,
kind of feeling proud about it. Just one thing, I don't see an option to share my screen. I think something needs to be enabled. Ah, yeah, now I get it.
no, no.
Got it. Got it. One
Okay.
second. 1 second.
So our speaker will be joining in a bit. He has some problem with presenting. Just wait for 2 minutes.
So
Yeah, he has joined. Yeah.
I had
Are you
to
able to
quit
present?
Chrome. No, 1 second. It's fine. I just had to quit the Chrome for the system settings to work. 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it is. I
It's
can.
fine. Right. Okay. Finally,
Yeah.
I'm here. Okay, guys. So I actually prepared a short intro for me, but Kartika already had a great intro. I couldn't even think of something like that. But okay, let's move on with the roadmap of today's session. So we'll probably start with, I mean, we were supposed to start with my story, but then we'll move on to the strategies that I have for you guys for part A and part B. Then there's one thing that I would want to talk about, that like how to get a good rank. I mean, I don't promise that, but I do feel that the approach that I've taken is something that you can take some tips from. And then we'll briefly talk about the portfolio tips, though I feel that this time you should probably focus on the seed part and getting into the exam, like getting a good rank, and portfolio is something that comes after that. But again, we'll touch upon that a little. And then we'll be having the Q&A session. So my story started off when I did my bachelor's in design from NIFT in fashion communication. And then I went to Mumbai to actually work as an assistant art director. And so I had a friend in IDC back then, and just to visit him, I actually visited the campus, IDC Bombay, where I actually had a major FOMO that I think I should also apply for CEED, maybe give it a try. And that is when my first attempt was CEED was, and I kind of cracked with a decent rank. And I had to mention the rank here just because there's a section in my agenda which says like how to get a good rank. So I just didn't want you guys to feel like, who is this guy actually talking about getting a good rank if he hasn't had a good rank himself. That's why I had to mention it. So, and then got into IIT Guwahati, and Bombay didn't accept me out of all the colleges that I applied to. That's sad, but I don't have any guilt for that. And currently I work as a UX designer at Google. So yeah, moving on for the strategies of part A and part B. So it was kind of, I was going through the different videos that you guys had, that the other two sessions. That was a brilliant session by Harsha and Simran. And I was really, I mean, I was wondering what is something that I can talk about, that which is like adding more value. So I wondered, like, now we only have like a month left for the exam. So practical tips and strategies that you guys can actually implement in 1 month is something that I should talk about, and not something that would require you to like have a couple of months in hand. So most of the strategies and tips that I would be talking about in this session will be focused on the last month roadmap and plan of action. So let me tell you how I got like how, what was my approach about part A. So I started off with definitely solving all the PYQs, be it seed, be it USEED. So I started out with that. And 1 second, guys. Yeah. So I started out with solving all the PYQs from different like USEED, SEED, NID, NIFT. And it wasn't just one single time that you actually solve these papers. You have to particularly solve all these papers at an interval of like, you solve a previous year question paper of 2020, then you move on to 21, after move on to 22, and then you visit the 2020 question paper back. It's not just a single time that you have to solve it. You have to keep revisiting it. And you must have noticed this. I mean, I am sure most of you must have had a chance to actually go through a previous year question paper and practice it and see how much you score. And you must have noticed a pattern, like when initially you started out with solving a paper, you kind of like scored pretty decent in the first attempt, because that is the reason for that. That is when you were actually very calm and composed, and you were not like running against time. You actually just wanted to explore how the question paper is. So that is something that you should like take care of, that this exam needs you to be very calm, very composed. I mean, it's not JEE advanced or JEE mains that you have to be very strategic about, or very hard, or you have to do a lot of hard work before the exam. You have to mug up a lot of things. That is not the case with C. The more you enjoy this exam, the better you perform. I mean, that is very easy to say, but I know it's very difficult to implement, very difficult to stay calm right before the exam. But that is something that worked for me. I mean, for that, if you want to like meditate, if you want to like take a good sleep, listen to music right before the exam in the morning, do it. But you have to be as calm as possible. So I was talking about how I approached part A. Like, I started my preparation around mid-November. That is when I actually got done with one of my projects in Mumbai. I was working on a web show. So I came back to my hometown. I started my prep in mid-November. I had almost 2 months to prep, and I started out with a lot of question papers. And one thing that I did was, which I believe I should also do, which not a lot of people talk about, is once you solve the papers, once you visit the different answer sheets, the answer keys, and see what all are the answers of the different question, you just shouldn't stop there. You actually have to make a report for yourself. Now, by report, what I mean, like you see, the first point that I've mentioned here is like building your own template through consistent practice and analysis. So, what is exactly a template? So, most people believe that if they talk to or if they listen to a lot of people from the CEED background who have scored good ranks, who have like gotten good scores, we'll just follow the template that these guys have followed and we'll use it and we'll get a good score, good rank. That is not the case. So that is what I always say to anyone who asks me. It's basically that you'll have to build your own template, you'll have to build your own strategy. There's nothing, everyone is distinct, everyone is an individual here. You'll have to build everything on your own, and that's the template is that you build when you actually solve a paper. You find the answer, and when you solve multiple papers multiple times, you'll have to figure out a pattern. Like these are the set of questions that you are always like succeeding in solving. These are the type of questions you are failing at solving. These are the type of questions which taking a lot of time. So when you do that, when you do analysis after you solve a paper, that is when you create a whole report for yourself to actually take it to the exam hall. So that is one thing that you have to build. That's the one strategy that you have to build, is to actually know, actually be very sure that what all are the questions that you are supposed to answer, what, and most importantly, what all are the questions that you are not supposed to answer. Because most people try to like fetch a lot of good marks in the first part. They try to like run through all the questions, like attempt all the questions, which is a big I mean, it's a big no. That is something that you shouldn't be doing. So what you should be focusing on is basically to build a strategy where you know which questions you want to attempt, which questions you shouldn't be attempting, and that is how you divide your time. Because if someone feels that they can attempt all the questions in the 1 hour that you get for the part A, that is something that is not going to happen. So that is how exactly this question paper is designed, if you look closely. So there are a lot of questions in the question paper which are very easy, very basic, but to solve, to get to the answer, you'll have to spend a lot of time. And those are the questions that are meant to be like consuming your time. So you should be very strategic about that. So that's something that is building your own template means. You have to formulate a whole strategy. Then second point is staying in the zone. So what staying in the zone means is that what I did is like, you solve 10 papers, you solve it suppose 3 times, and you're done with it. I mean, I know the syllabus of CEED is not very tough, it's not very lengthy like other exams. If you properly give time for a month or so, you'll probably be getting done with all the question papers that's available on the internet for the previous 10 years. But that's the thing, you shouldn't be stopping there right before the day of the exam. Like if the exam is this year, I think the exam is on 18th of January, till 17th or 16th of January, you should be practicing part A. You should be solving papers. It is more of a muscle memory thing. You have to be in that zone. You cannot just like be done with all the papers and leave it to rest and then like relax for a few days. You have to be in that zone. You have to be like up with that momentum of solving the papers in that limited amount of time. So that is one tip that I always give to people, because I see, because I myself got like done with all the papers at a point, and I was like, now I've done with all these papers, I've followed, I mean, I've solved a couple of sample papers as well, what's next? That is when I realized that you should be solving all the papers. You should keep revisiting those papers right before the day of the exam, so just be in that zone. And the next tip for part A is like practicing detachment. Now, what detachment is here is basically, you should know, like when like talking about the first point, if you have made a strategy for yourself, if you have made a template for yourself, and you know that these set of question is something that I cannot take a chance at. I mean, there was a question at my time where we had a figure, and it had like different axes, like this, it had XYZ axis, and we had to actually rotate it at a certain angle and then figure out like what's the final figure would look like. That was one question that I analyzed, that most of 9 out of 10 times I've made that question wrong. So when that question came in the exam, I was 100% sure that I will not be touching or like giving a glance at this question, because that is something that I always make mistake at. So that is how you divide your time, and that is how you practice detachment. You shouldn't be like, it shouldn't come to your ego that, okay, how can I not solve this question, I have to solve this. So you should know like when to stop, when to move to the next question, so that you don't miss out on something that you might be able to solve. So I think that is something that I followed. And there's one more tip that I have for you guys. I mean, I still think we have something 40 or 44 questions in part A, and we have 1 hour to solve it. So what I did while my preparation is that I kept one question, 1 minute strategy. So if we have 44 questions, I have 44 minutes, and the remaining 15, 16 minutes that I have is to revisit those questions that I'm not able to complete in 1 minute. So I'm not asking you to exactly follow what I say. In fact, I'm not even asking you to follow anything that I say here. It's everything should be your strategy, your template. Like me, there are more people that you can see videos of, you can talk to, but you should always stick to your template, your strategy that you have built. You should never just blindly follow anyone's strategy. That is something that worked for me. That is something that might or might not work for you. So you should take care of that. So I had this thing about like one question, 1 minute strategy that really helped me practice all the questions in limited amount of time, so that the amount of time that you're left with at the end, you can revisit those questions. So that is something, that detachment that you have to follow. Okay, so let me see if I have something else for part A. Okay, so now we have part B right now. So before moving on to the interesting part, like how to get a good rank, let's discuss a little about part B, the strategies that you should follow. So a similar approach in part B should be there. Like that is the first point, which is plan your sequence. So that is to attempt questions in the order that suits your workflow. So you might get this. I mean, I'm not against anyone, or I don't say that anyone is saying anything wrong, but I have heard this people saying that you should allocate equal amount of time for every question in part B, which for me personally didn't work. And there's a reason why I say that. So there are 5 different questions in part B. The first one is sketching. We have form sensitivity, we have visual sensitivity, we have creativity questions, and problem identification, if I'm not wrong. So every person has different strengths and weaknesses. Someone who is very creative might not require, like if we divide 2 hours for 5 questions, like if you have 20, 25 minutes or 30 minutes for each question, every person might not require, someone who's very creative might not require 20 to 25 minutes to actually spend on the creativity question. But someone who is a little weak at drawing human figures might require a lot more time than 20 to 25 minutes in solving the question one of part B. So that is what I feel. If you practice a lot, if you solve a lot of papers, including part B, that is when you can actually build your plan, build your sequence, that which question is consuming most of your time, so that you can divide. When I start, so let's say what I did. So for me, part B, question 1, which had human anatomy in it, which had composition, which had human figures, took me around 30 to 35 minutes while I was practicing. So I knew this question would require a lot more time than others. But on the other hand, the questions related to visual sensitivity and form sensitivity took me not more than 10 minutes. So that is how I calculated and divided my time. That is how I decided my hierarchy, like which question I will attempt first, how much time should I give it. Because I knew, like if I come to the form sensitivity question where I have to draw in sketches of different objects and like do a little shading and all, that is something that I can manage to do in 10 to 15 minutes. So I can like use the leftover 5 to 10 minutes in question 1. So that is why I believe you shouldn't be like focusing on dividing equal time for equal questions. You should practice beforehand, like the part B of all the papers, and see which question requires more time. So that is how you can plan your sequence. Okay, that is how maybe I'll attempt the question, which will help me actually attempt all the questions and be strategic about it. Next is the point that, again, it's a follow-up point, like you have to divide your time smartly, which I did. I actually just finished question 2 and question 3 of part B in 10 minutes, so that I can save some more time for question 1. And the other point that I feel would work for you, which you can take, is to scan all the questions first. So what people do is basically they move on to the first question. They put in all their effort and brain in the first question, they solve it, and then they move on to the second question. So what happens is that when you suddenly open the second question or the third question, you consume the first couple of minutes in actually understanding what the question is. You are actually in a state of a little stress and little anxiety. So to actually think of something new, think of something creative, it takes a lot of time. So when you just jump to the question once you finish the first question is where you actually require a couple of minutes to actually think what should be the answer, like, or how do I think of this. So what I prefer here is, like, when you open part B, you should actually go forward and at least have a overview of all the questions that have come. So what happens in that scenario is that when you start to solve question one, you already have an idea like what all are the different questions in the paper that you are going to solve in the coming time. So subconsciously, you actually can think of some solutions, not everything, but something that can like cross your mind by the time you solve question one. So that helps you to use your time very effectively. So let's say, especially for question the last question, which is the problem identification question, which you usually get a bus stand, a metro station, a railway station, something like that. So if you already know, if you have already skimmed through the question paper, like that the last question requires you to identify 10 different problems related to a railway station, and while you are solving the question one, you can actually think of different problems in the back of your mind. So that is something that how you can use to actually use your time very effectively. So those are some strategies of part B that I think I worked for me. I will not be talking about a lot of cliche and very known tips and tricks, because I know you guys are already into the preparation for a while now, and it's just 1 month. So most of you already have seen and been through a lot of tips and taken actions on that. So I'm talking about things that actually I think I worked for me individually. So yeah, then yeah, the next important question, which is again coming from my experience, take it with a pinch of salt, but it worked for me, and I believe and I trust that it should work for you as well. So it's basically how to get a good rank, and for me the answer is a good score in part B. Now, why do I say that? Is because the score that you get in part A is just a qualifying score. I have seen people who have scored like 80, 85 out of 100 in part A, but a very low score in part B, and their rank still lies in 100 or 200 or something like that. The reason I say that, because the final score of CEED is calculated based on the 25% of the score that you get in part A and 75% of the score that you get in part B. So it is very evident and very self-explanatory here that you should try to fetch more marks in part B and not part A, because 75% of your seed score depends on part B. And part A, again, I am not asking you to not focus on it, because this is the qualifying paper. You'll have to qualify this paper to actually get your part B checked and like be eligible for getting a rank. So plan strategically, like in part A, if you are not very confident about multiple select questions, the MSQs, you should try not to attempt, because that's like that has a negative marking of -1 in comparison to NAT, which has 0 negative marking, in comparison to MCQ, which has minus 0.5 negative marking. So that is something that you have to plan very strategically. Even if you like don't touch the MSQ, like I'm not asking you to not go do that, but if you're not very sure out of 8 different questions, if you're only sure about 1 or 2, just go forward and just mark the couple of questions that you know. Apart from that, you can leave it, because you just have to cross the cutoff. You don't have to score a very high marks in part A. That is when people get trapped. So, and yeah, to how to get a good rank, you'll have to focus on scoring a good in part B. And how to actually score, I mean, this is a very common thing that people tell you to do, or you ask people, and everyone suggests like you can score good in part B, but everything boils down to the point that I'm not good at sketching. I just started out with sketching. I'm not from a design background or an art background. How do I actually get to score good marks? So that is when, again, strategy comes into picture. So I'll tell you a thing that I figured out, which actually worked for me. The king of getting good marks is to master the evaluation criteria. Most of the people read through the evaluation criteria, but they don't really focus on what it exactly says. And the truth behind getting a good score actually lies in the evaluation criteria. Now, why do I say that? Is because I've seen a lot of people stressed about not being good at drawing, not being good at human anatomy, not being good at shading, good line quality. But if you look closely, and what they do is that they practice all of the sketching, all of the human anatomy, the shading part and all, and they apply it everywhere. They apply it on every question that they solve. That is where they consume a lot of their time, and which don't even add a lot of value and don't even fetch them a lot of good marks in that question, because each evaluation criteria for each question is different, and not every question, listen to me very carefully, not every question requires good sketching. So it might not be very wrong to say that even if you're not good at sketching, even if you're not good with your drawing skills, you still can get through very easily and get a very good rank. Now, if you look closely, I have, like, this is from my question paper, like CEED 2023, that I have written all the evaluation criteria here, and we'll quickly see the comparison between all these different criteria, like how are they different from one another and how should you approach. So like the first question, the evaluation criteria for first question is imagination, overall composition of the picture, the quality of lines, attention to details, and anatomy and perspective. Now, if you look closely, not every evaluation criteria for every question has the same points. Like, you would not see anatomy and perspective, quality of lines in every question. So what does that mean? If you are good at sketching, well and good. If you are not, so you just have to be very sure that it's just the first question which requires you to be good at anatomy, perspective, quality of lines. If you somehow manage, like, you might require more than 20-25 minutes, but that's the only question that you might want to put in a little more effort to get the perspective right, get the anatomy right. You have to put in attention to details. The quality of line should be good, because this is what you should divide. Like, the first question is of 20 marks, and if you have 1 2 3 4 5 points here, you should think that each point like carries 4 marks, right? 4 into 5, 20. Yeah, so each point carries 4 marks. So even if you are not good at human anatomy, but you are very good at, like, putting in details, if you suppose drawing like at my time, we had this question where we had to draw a family of 4 people. There were 2 kids and a husband and a wife. So let's say I'm not very good at anatomy, and my human figures don't look very nice. They look kind of abrupt and not very well composed. But I'm good at detailing. I know all the details of the clothing, the material, the facial expressions. I am very good at line quality, suppose. I composed the picture very well, and I imagined a very well composed picture of the whole family standing together, taking a picture, whatever the question was. So the only area where I lose my marks is anatomy and perspective. I'll still fetch a good 18 to 19 marks in that. I mean, not 18 to 19, 16 or 15 marks in that question. The only 4 marks that I lose is in anatomy and perspective. So what people do is, if they see that this question requires anatomy and perspective, they usually, like, sort of ditch the question. They're like, I'm not good at this, I'll not be able to fetch good marks, let's move on to the next question, just draw something in the first one. That is not the case. Each point has some sort of marks that you should divide those marks based on these points. If the next question has 4 different points and it's 20 marks, so each point carries 5 marks. So even if you are not able to, let's say the last point is fun, you have to add humor to your sketch. Even if you're not able to add humor, which I actually did, I actually forgot to add some humor element in my sketch, but I will not lose a lot of marks, because that's just one of the 4 evaluation criteria points, right? So that is something that you should very much pay attention to, these evaluation criterias. uh, Talking about the first one again, I would like to give you a couple of tips. I mean, there are people who are preparing this year, there are people who are, like, sitting for CEED next year, and a lot of people say I'm not good at sketching. So I have a very quick tip for you, which I got from my drawing teacher back when I was, like, very young. So if you are not good at drawing and if you want to improve your line quality, what you can do is you can actually take a newspaper, sit with it, sit on the ground, spread the sheet, and use your hand to actually draw lines, draw continuous lines, draw shapes, draw circles. So what happens is that when you draw on a big piece of paper, that is something that you cannot do on a piece of a notebook or a small A4 sheets. You have to sit with a newspaper, old newspaper, sit with it, draw circles, draw as big circles as you want. So why I say you should do that is because that trains your forearm. So you should not be just using your wrist to draw circles or draw lines. You should be using your whole arm. So that is how actually an artist, someone who sketches will tell you that, if you notice, they'll use their whole arm to actually draw. That is how you train your muscles. So that is something that will help you improve your line quality. Draw a lot of circles, draw a lot of shapes, draw a lot of lines on the newspaper. It's just, I mean, waste paper. You can do as much as you want. So that's one tip that would help you improve your line quality. And what I did for human anatomy is, like, again, this is an interesting question. I got stuck here as well because my anatomy was also not that good. So what I did, I created a visual bank for myself. So what I did, I took one human figure, which is like a young male, young female. Then I took a old male and old female character, and then I took a kid, both boy and a girl. So these 5 to 6 different characters, I kind of mugged it up. I'm not saying that's the very right approach to go about drawing and sketching. But if you're like, if you're not very good at anatomy, if you're very new to sketching, that is something that you can do. So what I did, I actually studied that character, one single character, from all different angles, from front, back, both the sides, and actually mucked that up. I practiced it so much that when in any question, if you get to draw a kid, a young female, an old man, you can just use that as a template and tweak it a little, and just your composition will be on point. So that's a hack that you can use, which I use, because there's like n number of things that's there to learn in anatomy, and it's not possible to get used to it in 1 month or two. So that's something that you can do as well. If we talk about question number 2, so if you look closely, the criteria for question 2 is uniqueness, its diversity, its clarity, and fun. Nowhere you will see that it mentions anatomy, it mentions line quality, it mentions attention to details. So even if you follow the same effort, even if you give your same effort, which you give in question 1, to solve the question 2, which is creativity based, you will not fetch good marks. That is something that you have to take care of. So at one point, if I make very good sketches, very good anatomy in question 1, and the second question, even if I just doodle it, even if it's not in perspective, even if it's just a rough, not a rough sketch, but something very cartoonish that you draw, you'll still be able to fetch good marks, because the criteria here doesn't really say that it should be anatomy based or quality of line should be good. What should be there is uniqueness. What should be there is diversity between the different images that you've created. It should be having a humor element, the fun element. Similarly, in visual sensitivity, one point says that it should be effective communication of the concept. So the kind of question that I had in this, the question 3 at my time, was to draw a visual identity for an Indian women's hockey team or something like that. And these were the criteria. Like, it had to be creative visual representations. It has to be effective communication of the concept. So what effective communication here means is that you should now the brain work that you should put in this sort of question and these sort of evaluation criteria is that like what a visual identity is. If you're making something for an Indian women's hockey team, that is something that will be used in print, that will be used in digital mediums, that will be used on branding, packaging, small kits, t-shirts, a lot of big banners, posters. So that is something, that's the homework, that's the back end that you have to think of while designing something. So that is what effective communication means. It should be self-explanatory. It shouldn't be too loud. It shouldn't be too detailed that if it's printed on a small piece of paper or a small notebook, it's not visible. That shouldn't be the case. So that's it's more like a logo design thing. So that is something that you have to take care of when you are. It depends on what you are designing for. So in my case, it was Indian women's hockey logo, not logo, visual identity. So I thought of it in that way, like it should be in different mediums, different sizes. So it should be very clear, very self-explanatory, not very detailed, well composed. So that is something that you have to take care of. Again, we don't see mention of quality of lines here, or attention to details, or anatomy. So that thing would not measure, I mean, that thing would not help you fetch good marks, even if you like spend your time doing that. Similarly, with form sensitivity, in this question again, we say it's the one of the criteria is surface shading, the quality of lines, relevant details. So this is the first question out of all the 5 questions which says it requires surface shading. So if you go and like keep shading all the questions, all the sketches that you have, you will not fetch any good marks. So this is the only question that requires surface shading. So this is where you should put an effort to actually shade it. You should actually pay attention to put in relevant details of the products. The form should complement the function. So in this sort of question, you actually, in our time, we usually got a abstract form which we had to use and make a cutlery set or something for kids. So it should be very complementing, the functionality should be there. So those are the point that you have to take care of. And for problem identification, a lot of people do that. They, apart from doing the problems, apart from doing the problem identification, they move on, they write the solutions as well. That is one thing that you shouldn't do. And there's another very important point that I would like to mention for problem identification. Is like when you see a paper and suppose you get a question which gives the image of a bus stop. So what people do is that they try to find problems within that particular image of a bus stop. So if in that particular image you see a bus, you see sitting chairs, you see people standing, you see a bus stop, so you basically try to find problems within that image. But you have to be, listen to me very carefully, you have to be thinking beyond that image. So that image is just there as a static context that they want to give you. If it's a bus stop image that they have given you, it is not just the image that you have to focus on, it's not just the image that you should try to find problems in. The context is a bus stop, and everything that you can think that is related to a bus stop is something that you can find problem about. Let's say if they give a metro station image this year, and if the image has a metro station, I mean the image has a metro, it has a lot of people like entering the metro or exiting it, and that's the only image. But the context, the question says that the context is metro station, so you shouldn't be sticking to that particular metro scene that you see in the picture. You should actually think of more perspective, what other different problems that happens at metro stations, be it escalator problems, be it toilet, be it entering, exiting the metro station. So that is something that most people don't take care of. They just focus on the picture that is given. It's not that, it's the context. It's just there to give you the context, like what exactly are they talking about. That is something that you should take care of. Again, the pointers say that the evaluation criteria says that it should be severity of the identified problem, ability to make distinct observations, make communicate through visuals. Nowhere is it saying that it has to be good line quality. So if you can just clearly doodle it, then has to be no perspective in it. It can be a simple animated sort of a sketch or doodle, and you'll fetch good marks. So that is something that you have to take care of. That is something that will help even though the ones that are not very good at sketching to good marks. So that is the my understanding of how we get a good rank. And to get a good rank, you have to fetch good marks in part B, and this is how you actually get good marks. So to summarize that, what we learned in part B is that we have to train your eye. You have to be very observant. It's not something of a task that you should think of. Just be very observant, look at different things, look at different details of the different objects that you have, improve your line quality, take a newspaper, practice on that, build a visual bank for yourself in case of human anatomy, in case of expressions that you want to have, like just practice a lot of multiple 15, 16 different expressions, so that any figure, any human figure that you get to draw, you can just copy paste a particular expression from your visual bank. That is as simple as that for the ones that are not very good at sketching. Avoid any unnecessary details to questions that is not asked in the evaluation criteria. Focus on fundamentals. And for the last question, think beyond the reference image. Just don't stick to the image that is provided. Okay, next is, I'll just give you a small overview of the portfolio tips that you can take care of. I mean, I actually wanted to not talk about portfolio right now, because right now you shouldn't be thinking of that. You should just focus on CEED. But I know there are people who might want to like have an idea about that and will not stop thinking of the portfolio right now. That is something that I did as well. So my tip for making a good portfolio to get into IIT is to have a 3 project structure approach. First project is a master project that you'll present everywhere. That would be your go-to project. The second is your secondary project, which can be like from a competition or a freelance that you have done, or if you have been working in the industry, you can put in an industry project. If it's not a like NDA project, you can put in that. And one has to be a miscellaneous project. So miscellaneous project is, people usually look at it like as a tertiary project that they don't want to talk about, but it's a very important thing, because most of the people that you meet in IIT interviews, in CEED interviews, will have a good UI UX project or something like that. But what sets you apart from these people is the miscellaneous work that you have done, is the background that you're coming from. So I was from a film background. I had a couple of short films with me, which I've made. So I added that in my miscellaneous project. And I remember in IIT Delhi and IIT Hyderabad, I showed those films and they liked it, because as a designer, you're not just a UX designer. There's a lot of more aspects to it. So whatever you have done, whatever you like doing, add that to the miscellaneous project so that it adds depth to your profile. And for the master project, you can basically think of real world problems. Try to find a problem that you relate to, that you have faced or you have seen people around you facing. So just to give you a gist, for me, the project that I took as a master project was basically around old age people. So I saw my maternal grandfather. I observed him, a couple of points that I noted. And then I went on to research. I went to old age homes in urban cities. And then I figured out this loneliness and lack of purpose problem with old age people, and then I made a solution out of it. So what happens when you find a problem which is like, which you can relate to or which is around you, is that whenever whatever kind of questions you get asked down in the interview, you have answer to everything. So it's not a dummy project, something that you have made just for the portfolio. It's something that you actually relate to. So that is something that you should try to do. Find a real world problem. Okay, I think I've talked about a lot. The more we do a questionnaire session right now is something maybe we can get hold of a few more tips. So yeah, we can go forward with the Q&A session.
The Q&A is open. Everybody can drop their questions in the Q&A chat box.
And I'm sorry, I think I took a lot of time in explaining all this, keeping very limited time for the Q&A. But yeah, I'm open to
Uh,
questions.
yeah, we have a first question. It is from YouTube Live. Like Anaga has asked, to build a visual library, should we sketch humans, animals, objects? What should we sketch to build a human, like visual library?
So, see, that is something that you would get to know when you analyze a lot of previous year papers. So, as far as I remember, the kind of question papers that I've solved, I don't really see a lot of animal figures that were asked to draw. So, talking about the visual library, definitely you should practice human figures. You should practice perspective, like yeah, let's talk about the visual bank first. So you should practice a lot of human figures from different angles. You should practice you should have a visual bank of emotions about different facial expressions for kids, for adults. But talking about the animals part, I don't think seed usually asks about a question like where you actually have to put in an animal in the composition. I don't know if that has happened in the recent past. I have given seed 3 years back. But yeah, something that you see constantly coming in the question papers in the previous years, that is something that you should prepare a visual bank for. And see, this visual bank thing is not something that everyone should look forward to. It is especially for people who think that they're not very good at sketching and they have a very limited amount of time to actually figure out how they draw well. So for that, it's like a cheat code. So for me, the anatomy part was very difficult. So I mean, I was good at sketching products and all, but not very good at human sketching. So that is something that I focused on and prepared a visual bank for me. So it depends on what you want to like find a shortcut to, or what you think would be difficult for you to actually get used to in a limited amount of time. So it depends on that.
Uh, Another question has come. Can you speak about your work experience a bit? Working experience.
Work
Yeah, that
experience.
yeah, that is something I am also interested in. Like while going through LinkedIn, I saw you have a more work experience. Not I'm not talking about your years or anything, but you have different work experiences. I guess they are also asking about the same, like how these have evolved into what you are working on now, or how these past experiences have helped.
Correct. So see, honestly, I'm a person who actually don't stick to a certain thing, a certain field. I mean, field I do stick to, but there's something that I like, not juggling between, but actually I like to do a lot of things at the same time. So I like making films. I'm into photography. I like designing. I went on to set designing where I did art direction. I like making document. I mean, my interest in filmmaking helped me get a project in the government of India for documenting the life of artisans in Varanasi. It was the India Toy Fair project. So I'm not sure if that is a good trait. That is something that you should look up to. But I kind of have experience in doing a couple of things which definitely shaped my understanding of the UX right now, right here. So how, if you ask me how did it help me, so I remember a couple of short films that I've made. I actually like exploring a lot of internal conflicts and emotions of a human being and making films around it. So there was this film that I made about a guy dealing with his internal conflicts, and it was something like that. So when I moved on to UX, when I moved on to pursuing my masters, so the kind of projects that I chose, the competitions that I did, really helped me get into the shoes of the user, because like my interest in filmmaking, my interest in working on internal conflicts of human beings really helped me understanding the users, because that is something that, I mean, not everything was like joined or not every wire was connected, but to some extent what I did really helped me as a better UX designer. And right now here at Google itself, I think a lot of experiences from my past, like for working as an assistant art director, when you're working there, there's a lot of like it's a chaotic industry. I think you have to be very prompt. There's a lot of work that you do. So being done that, having been in that industry, like it really helped me like go through all the different stakeholder management thing and all the cross-functional partners that I deal with on a day-to-day basis at Google. So I think to some extent everything kind of joined the dot and helped me frame whatever I am right now and the approach that I follow in design. But it's a different sort of a discussion to actually see what all things got connected and helped me be a better designer. But yeah, I have been doing a lot of things.
Hmm.
I think your question
Okay.
made me realize that.
Okay. So same question like Anaka has asked her, like first time when she did PYQs, she scored around 25 to 30, then slowly 40. Now she is scoring 85 to 90. Now she is in a dilemma if she is just getting familiar with the questions or if her skills are improving.
See, definitely your skills are improving if you are maintaining. So the challenging part in solving part A is not that how high you can score in a particular paper. It's to maintain the consistency. If you score like 40 this time, in the next paper you suppose score 42, 45, and if the range is static, if you are like consistent with the score that you're getting, you're good to go because you are in that zone. The problem starts when you actually get a 85 in one paper and 24 in the other one. So that is something that you should be scared of. And you shouldn't be scared, like whoever asked this question, it's not an issue for you. Just keep focusing on solving different papers. No matter how much you score, don't stop solving those papers. The papers that you get 85 right now might only fetch you a 50 or 45 the next time you solve it after a few days. You never know. That's why the most important thing is that you should just keep solving papers till the day of your exams, and you shouldn't be worried. It's like a good sign that you have.
Moving on to part A, somebody has asked how to increase speed in part A.
I think that's a very generic and obvious question. It has to be practice, and not just for part A. It's for part B and any other thing as well. You have to keep a timer. You have to keep, like as I mentioned, I kept the strategy of one question 1 minute. So if there are 45 questions, I kept 45 minutes for that. I mean, it's very difficult to skip a question after a minute has passed, but try to do that so that you are left with 10 to 12 minutes after solving the whole paper, and that you can revisit those questions. So it's just, I think Sudhanshu asked this question. So it's just the matter of practice. There's nothing else. There's no, I mean, no advanced tips that you can get for that. It's just practice that you can do, which will help you actually increase your speed. And be very sure on what to leave. Like most people try to finish all the complete paper. If you just think of it as like you don't have to solve all the questions, you don't have to attempt all the questions, you'll easily be able to manage to finish the paper in the amount of time that you get.
Okay. So Nikhil has asked, are there any other resources other than previous year papers for someone preparing in just 1 to 2 months?
See, Nikhil, so your case is something similar to me. Told you I started in November mid, and I exactly had around 2 months for this. So if you're talking about resources other than previous year question paper, it should only come when you are done with the question papers. It shouldn't be a substitute. So if you think that you have not completed solving all the question papers, just don't look for any other resources, because there's no limit to that. Like what I did when I was almost done with solving these question papers multiple times, I like bought some silica, or I don't even remember some. There are a lot of pages that sell you a lot of sample papers. So it's not a good one or a bad one that you can get your hands on. It's just that you need something to like solve right before the exam, right before the date of the exam. So that is, if you are left with questions from CEED or UCEED or NID bachelor's, NID masters, just get your hands on those question papers and solve it. If you are done with everything, if you're done solving each of these papers 5 to 6 times, which is a little rare, then you can move on to get sample papers from different, like get it from Kafal or Silica or wherever you feel your budget allows. I mean, it's no one is good or bad, it's just that you need to have something in your hand. So that is something that you can do.
Hmm. Amrita have asked, can AI help with creating and solving Part B questions? Can you elaborate on Part B markings?
1 second, what's the question? Can you just repeat the question
Uh,
again?
can AI help with creating and solving Part B questions? Can you elaborate on Part B markings?
See, so I think I've already talked about the evaluation criteria for Part B. But there's nothing new that I can add to that. Talking about AI, so that is something that wasn't very prominent back then when I was preparing. But definitely, I think it's not a wrong thing to do if you are trying to solve Part B. And if you want to get a couple of explorations for a question, definitely go on to AI, like see different kinds of things that they can draw. But again, having multiple ideas, having multiple options to see or choose from will not help you score a good marks. You have to practice. So rather than going to AI, generating multiple ideas and filling your visual bank in the mind that, okay, I have 5 different ideas for this question, will not work. It's better to draw those 5 different ideas on paper, even if you see it from the AI or see it from the web, and practice it. But you have to practice each question multiple times, each of these iterations. That is what will help you. And about the evaluation criteria, I think I've already talked about, so there's nothing new to that.
Hmm. Another question is about, they say the exam paper, the paper quality is very thin. So, what tool should you suggest for logo question? Can we use brush pen, fit pen, black pen? What tools to take to exam?
See, I don't see any question like at my time, I didn't see any question having any color requirement or anything where it was mentioned that you have to use colors to fill it or something. So that is not an evaluation criteria. So don't even talk about brush pens and sketch pens or markers, anything. That is something that I tell everyone: just carry a good quality pencil, not one, carry 2 or 3 pencils. One can be a 2B or max 3B for a light sketch, and then you can move on to 4B or 5B for a little shading or maybe a little depth to the lines. That's all that is needed. So there's no point of like worrying about the thickness of the paper. You have to use a 2B or 3B pencil, and to like add depth you can use a 4B pencil. That's all that is needed, until and unless you've been asked that you should fill colors. I don't think CEED will ask about that. So don't worry about that, just use a pencil, just use. And you can draw as light as possible. If you're not very confident with darker shades of pencil, just use a lighter pencil. You shouldn't be ruining your paper, you shouldn't be smudging all the sketches that you've made. So go forward with a lighter pencil if you're not confident.
Okay. Sudhanshu has asked how to prepare for art and culture part of the exam, like painting and historical art and contemporary architecture and all.
Do we get such questions in part A? I don't remember getting something like that. I mean, might have had these in the previous years,
Okay.
but those basically comes in the GS part, the general studies, I think. So whenever you're preparing for a reasoning based paper, whether it's GK or GS, that is something, or current affairs, that is something you can find from the. I mean, I don't think I cannot think of any resources, any specific resource as such where you can move on to the GS part. Just go onto the web, and now we have AI. We can get. I mean, it's very easy to get hands on the different GS
Mm.
topics, the different contemporary arts. I mean, you should be easy to find such things. Apart from that, I can't think of any specific resource which talks about the general studies part or the contemporary art part, and we hardly get a question or two regarding those things in part A. So there are more questions we should focus on, rather than giving a lot of time to just learning these general studies questions.
Okay. Shan has asked, can we add photography to the portfolio? Will it be relevant?
I have had added photography in my portfolio. I told you I am kind of a filmmaker. I mean, it's a big thing to call myself, but I used to make films. So and I did started with photography. So I did add photography. You can add that. But yeah, the first master project and the secondary project should be heavy enough for you to actually present in the interviews. It shouldn't be just the I mean, your master project cannot be a film or a photography. And if you're applying for somewhere which has, suppose, UX design, interaction design, or let's say animation design, and adding photography is not something that would help you get through. But yeah, you can definitely add.
Okay. Anaka from YouTube has again asked, will I clear part A with just repeating the solving of previous year question papers? And is it important to buy puzzle books and solve those?
Important by which book?
Puzzle books and solve those.
See, I think for seed, the amount of question papers that we have, including seed, USEED, NID, NIFT, we don't really need any. I mean, I know what kind of puzzle book she's referring to. I mean, for reasoning exams and all, we do have these books where we get to practice a lot of reasoning questions and all. But if you actually analyze those 10, 12 different papers that you have for seed, you'll be able to, I mean, understand the pattern and practice those questions. And if there's any specific question that you think you want to practice more, you can go on Google and figure out such questions. You'll find a lot of resources. Like suppose there's a question where you can actually rotate a figure and then see, like, rotating it on different angles as I mentioned, and then see how the figure will look like. So if you go on and add a question to the web, you'll find different questions which you can practice about. So there's no specific puzzle book or something that you need to get your hands on until and unless you have a lot of, I'm sure there's a lot of question papers that people don't get their hands on. If you're done with seed, go to USEED. If you're done with USEED, go to NID, masters, bachelors, NIFT, other design colleges. So that's enough. I think that you don't need a lot of external books and all.
Okay. So I guess questions are done. Like if you have any other question, yeah, one more. I guess. Any tips on triangle counting or surface counting questions?
See, I mean, it's been a while when I appeared for seed, but any question, it's not just like the triangle counting question or the surface counting question. Any question, your approach will be different than someone else sitting right beside you. And that is the case with most of the questions in seed. So there's always this logical approach to the question, and there's this smart approach to the question. So I remember in my time, there was this one question which where we had to use a little bit of trigonometry to figure out the length, which I was foolish enough to use the trigonometry logic. But we actually was a very simple, smart logic that you could have used to figure out the answer. So it's not that there's this one specific way that I use, which you can copy paste and use for like solving a particular question. You can, that only happens when you solve a lot of questions. You get to understand like, okay, this is the type of questions I'm taking like 2 minutes to solve maybe. So like for the triangle counting question, most of them will be able to solve it. The point is, how long are you taking to solve the question? If it's more than a minute or two, you shouldn't be attempting that question. That's consuming a lot of your time. And they do that with a lot of questions in seed. There are very easy questions, but that consumes a lot of your time. So that's meant for you to waste your time and then miss out on questions. So you should be very careful about that.
So Anaga has asked one more question. In creativity subtopic, storyboard question where four boxes are given with elements, can we combine all four boxes and create one? Will
No,
I stand out?
no. There's a reason they have given four different boxes. If they wanted to see a single picture, they would have given a single box. Don't try to make something different out of the question that has been asked. Be as direct in answering the question as direct as they're in asking you that particular question. So don't play with that.
So Anaga has again asked for your part A mark, part B mark, and rank. I guess it is 6. It should be not like it, I have given in the introduction. Part A and part B mark.
Yeah, so at my time, the cutoff score was 28.5 for general, and my score was 35. Yes, it was 35. And for part B, my score was 70. So, so I don't think I scored a lot in part A, as I mentioned. It was just like 5, 6 marks more than the cutoff. But part B, I got 70 marks, which helped me score a decent rank. So I think that is something that I talked about. You should at least focus on part B more, like fetching to get a good rank.
So Basim has asked, how is IIT Guwahati and overall MDes experience, like mentors, peers, academics, and all?
I think that question would require another hour for me to answer. I mean, to talk about the 2 years of experience and the mentors, peers, academics, everything. But yeah, I think I cannot say that it was bad because here I am, like I got a good job. So there's no point saying that the experience wasn't good or the professors were not good. But again, everything depends on what you expect out of your college. How much do you want to extract out of those 2 years that you have? So I mean, yeah, it's if you are here, if you're giving seed, you're already like enrolled and you're already signed up for it. So give the paper, get a rank, get the college that you want, and then go forward with it. It's not about any college is good or bad. It's more about what you expect out of it, how you can extract.
Okay. I guess with that our Q&A comes to an end. All every question has been answered. So moving on to a formal thank you for this nice, not I don't know how to form words for the session because being a listener for the other two sessions, I can confidently say this was not a regular session. And somebody else, I guess Amrita, she has mentioned in the chat itself. Amrita, yes, because this is not something which we get in YouTube or any other videos. You have put in a lot of effort, especially for the part B. I guess you have discussed more than strategy. You discussed how to prepare, not the strategical ways, but the academical ways. I guess that is what for me that is what stand out from your session today. Especially the one concept that has connected with me is the detaching from the question that you said. That really resonated with me in a sense that uh, now people, I'm not saying planning or going with a strategy is bad, but with strategy we can plan strategy, but we need to study. We need to study and we need to do things which that require. The strategy requires a what a back end thing that you discussed, and also in very in depth the way you structured and told about every section of part B. I guess that is what makes your session stands out from the other two sessions. Like as in the first session was more Harsha talked more about, and it was more like an introduction. Simran thought about how strategy will help, and you like more like a closing part. You gave how to combine all of these and work towards a goal which will end up getting good ranks. I guess this was the experience for all of us who attended today's session, and also I would like to thank you from myself and from the community FOF Kozhikode for being a speaker for our C 2026 series and for bringing out the best and giving the best back to the community of designers. Thank you so much, Ishan. I hope you also had a good time doing this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And that's the, I mean, if I'm to end with a note, that is something I would want to say that no matter how many people you listen to, no matter how many different tips and different strategies that you get, always stick to the one that you feel is right for you. Listen to your gut feeling. The one, if you really think that the points that I made is something distinct from others, it's just because that is something that I developed myself based on
Mm.
my understanding, my practice. If I would have followed someone's strategy, would have followed a particular video and stuck to that, I might have gotten a good rank, but I might not have anything very specific or different to say. So that is that I would want to talk about. Like don't even take my point seriously if you feel like. It's just that build your own strategy, and that is based on the practice and the all solving the papers and everything that you do. So yeah, that should be good enough. And it's just, I mean, the people who are appearing this year, don't take it to the heart if you don't crack seed in the first attempt. It's not the end of the world. I mean, I know it's an exam, but we have been like in our society, we have been trained in a way where we feel like if we fail once, it's like the end of the world. It shouldn't be the case. It's a pretty decent exam, pretty nice, easy exam. It's just that you have to be very calm and composed while giving it. So yeah, all the best for your exam.
Okay, thank you everybody who have joined us today. And a great. I'm very grateful for the community that I am part of, which has organized an initiative like this. So this is where FOF Kozhikode stands out because there are communities which are for designers, which are by designers. But what makes FOF Kozhikode stand out is that they have initiatives for designers like me who are yet to find which space in design I belong to people who are just or to aspiring designers. So thank you, FOF Kozhikode, for organizing an initiative like this. So with this C 2026 series comes to an end, I believe FOF will come up with more initiatives like this for the growing designers community. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Ishan. Bye.